Welcome to the Born and Raised Music Podcast. This is another special Beer Me That Vinyl episode. I am Kent.
And I am Garrett. And today we have two really special guests.
Who are?
Well, it gets a little confusing because Garrett Sale.
I guess that's true. It would make sense for you to introduce Garrett.
Right.
Because
so,
you're also Garrett.
Let's call him William Wild. That's his artist and stage name.
Yeah.
William Wild, Garrett Sale, good friend of ours and an amazing musician, jumps on our podcast to talk about his self-titled record, his first record that he put out. We kind of go back and reminisce about that and talk about the remix that's only available on vinyl. And we also talk about where that record kind of took him. We talk a little bit about his newest record that's coming out. And then we also have Aaron from Crafty Bastard.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about these beers that are going to be paired with the record, even though I'm a self-professed, not an IPA guy. They're two different kinds of IPAs, and both are delicious. And we get into, this is William Wild's debut record, self-titled, came out in 2014. And it's just incredible to hear Garrett Sale describe the process of it and talking about how he didn't really know what he was doing when he started. It's a debut record from a guy that was in college when he released it. And it's accomplished so much. We'll get into a lot of the different great things that have come out of this record, and it's just beautiful.
And the beer segment, this is one of our longest. We're going to try to keep this intro short because it's one of our longest podcasts simply because there was so much good information. Both the music and the beer part go a little long, but they're well worth the listen.
We didn't have anything to cut.
We tried to edit it and it was like, no, we can't leave any of this out. And Aaron from Crafty Bastard, we learned a lot about beer. We learned a lot about his brewery. And I think we came out being, I wouldn't say we're beer professionals by any means, but we definitely are well more educated and ready to drink.
Still better at drinking it than talking about it.
That's true. That is true. But no,
but we can ask people who know how to talk about it.
Yeah. What's funny is that we always kind of start with a 4-pack of this week's, beer. And I've already gone through 2 4-packs.
Mazel tov.
It's a great one. And I'm probably going to pick up another one before this weekend. So it's definitely an amazing episode too.
Yeah. Really excited about the interviews and really excited about the record and the beer. Garrett, where can people go to actually pick up this pairing?
Yes, you want to head to beermethatvinyl.com. You can also find it at bornandraisedknox.com, clicking around, but the easiest way to do it is go to beermethatvinyl.com, and we've actually got a special opportunity this time. You can get the pairing. You can also add, if you missed last week and you want that vinyl, that's available on our website, so you can add that to your cart. You can also add the second EP of William Wild to your cart as well. So if you're just really looking to fill up your vinyl collection, this is a good week to do it.
Absolutely. In the interest of keeping this intro short because it's our longest episode, what do you say we just get right down to it?
Let's roll. We are here to talk about you and your music.
Seamless segue.
Oh man.
Let's talk about it. We're talking about my first record, right?
Yes. The first record will be the one that is featured on Beer Me That Vinyl. But we've talked about doing a bundle. So if someone wanted both the EP and the original, they could buy that at once. But the official, quote-unquote official, Beer Me That Vinyl pairing is Crafty Bastard, which is a local brewery here in town. It's going to feature Hop Candy, which is, I know you said, one of your favorite beers.
It's beautiful.
And then another one of their varieties. I'm not sure what they said. We'll clarify that soon. But so you'll have a little variety in that package. And then this self-titled album, William Wild.
I made that when I was a wee tot. I'm excited to talk about it, actually, because it's been a long time. And no one cared about it when I put it out, so it's kind of
the
first time
I'm
talking about it.
Just a baby. I remember when it came out. I mean, we were all kind of growing up. This was 2014. I was still in Nashville at the time when it came out.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how long ago it was. People forget that I even lived there. Yeah, it was a great album. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the EP. We're going to talk about the new record that you have out now, and then we're going to talk about what's coming up next. But let's rewind before the self-titled came out and just talk about William Wild, how the band came together, how you started this concept, and then how this record kind of came together. So where did it all originate? Because there's 9 songs on this record?
I have no idea. Yeah, that sounds right. 9 or 10?
There's 9.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's rewind back to when William Wild started. Before this record was recorded, like what inspired the songs? What inspired the formation of this entity in the band, and the concept? And where did those songs kind of come from? Because 2014, how old were you? I mean, you were we were so young back then. We had so much hope.
Truly. I was in college. It basically, my entire music journey came about because I got obsessed with recording. Like several records in a row that I was really obsessed with were all homemade. So like
what?
For Emma, I want to say.
For Emma was one of them. Bon Iver record. The Fleet Foxes' first record was
really.
Yeah.
I was really into Tusk at one point, which is a Fleetwood Mac record that
yeah,
they made at home. Elliott Smith. So, anyways, I basically figured out, and this is like right around the time that consumer audio recording stuff was like becoming pretty easy to use and cheap. So I think like late in high school, I got an Inbox 2 for all the nerds out there, and a little mic, and just started figuring out how to make stuff. And basically, I never really saw myself as a songwriter because I was just creating little worlds in Pro Tools. And it wasn't until like after my first record, maybe even after Steady Now, the next one, that I even considered songwriting a thing. Like I was just making stuff in Pro Tools.
So you were focusing more sonically and like creating soundscapes rather than sitting down and putting together the construction of a song.
Yeah, I mean, I was making song structures. They weren't normal song structures really, but and like dynamics and flow, I just was super detached from the word songwriter and like singer songwriter, like as a genre. I didn't even consider that something that I was at all. So yeah, William Wild came to be, let's see, sophomore year in college is when I first started turning wheels on it. And I basically, I guess I'd gotten decent at recording, although I'd never like recorded anybody or released a song. So I don't know where that headspace was coming from, but I decided to make a record, and I think I had one song, maybe, Evening Blues. And the first thing I did was, one of my best friends growing up, his grandparents moved. They used to live on the lake and had a big cabin on the lake in like Loudon. And I had a lot more courage back then, but I literally just called them, and they were trying to sell it, but they weren't really being very proactive about it. So I asked if I could use it to record an album. And they were like super stoked to let me do it. I don't think they knew I was going to be there for like 18 months.
You literally just camped out in their house while they're trying to sell it. And you're like, hey, it's a recording studio now.
Yeah, they didn't live there. No one did. And I think they were I can't remember. Maybe they weren't sure they were going to sell it. But that was a huge deal for me because it had like this living room that was like probably 20 feet tall, like, and just huge.
So it was set up in the right way.
Yeah,
Or
I mean, it
as
was
right as a
empty.
house could be.
It was empty. I put some like blankets on the wall and stuff. It's crazy to think like if I had access to something like that now. Well, I pretty much do because I have a studio.
But no, I see what you're saying. Like how much information you have now, like how you could apply it to that space.
Yeah, totally.
That's what I was about to ask. Is like, were you guys walking around building ISO booths and stuff like that?
I hung like packing blankets on the wall, and I made some like panels out of pallets, Pinterest pallets.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would just go out there. It was a really formative time because, and this is how I fell in love with music, is I didn't really have any friends that played music, or I had a few, but I wasn't in like a musical community. And so it was totally an escape. It was like 30 minutes away. I'd kind of get in the zone after class, go out there until like 3 a.m, probably most of the time, and literally just try stuff over and over. And honestly, it was beautiful. I don't like, I have a hard time tapping into that, a harder time now tapping into that like state that I was in back then. I guess it was mainly because I was so just naive and like I didn't know anything. I had some like crappy mics, a drum kit out there. I'd never recorded drums before. And I just was literally walking around that room just like banging on stuff and trying to like make chords. I didn't even know anything about music, honestly, like how to build a chord.
That's crazy. I mean, just given the context of this record, what record came out from those moments is really, really, it's mind-blowing. To know that, like, you know, what experience, I mean, I definitely like relate to what you're describing of when you haven't really learned any of it. There's two sides of it. There's this side that, okay, I don't know what's good, what's bad yet, and I'm learning that as I go, but there's a certain amount of eagerness to figure it out that you kind of lose, I guess, once you get into it. And that amount of energy makes good records. It just makes really good, authentic records when you're that eager to hear something good, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's, it's all about discovery for me. And like, feeling like I don't know what I'm doing is the only time I ever write something good. And most of the time, it's not like I'm not a musical genius at all, or even like in the grand scheme of things, like that great at recording. But I just, I guess I'm obsessed with it more than anything. But yeah, it's creating a situation where I can discover something. I heard this quote by David Bowie recently, and he was talking about how he basically has to like reinvent the whole process every time he goes to make a record. And so he described it as like being on the beach and like wading out into the ocean. And like, sometimes it takes a while to get out there because you're like scared. But the moment that like his feet aren't touching the ground anymore and he can't really like see anything is the moment it's time to like make the record. And
that's really
the older
cool.
you get, the more you get into it, the less you want to feel that way. Like every record I've ever started, I've said, "Oh, I know what to do this time," and I'm just so fucking wrong every time.
Yeah, hearing you describe it that way sounds all at once like so exhilarating to be able to like reinvent this process, but at the same time, like so daunting because you have to reinvent the whole fucking process.
Yeah.
Right? Do you kind of feel that that kind of weight when you're getting going and you're just like, oh man, I gotta basically start all the way from zero again to produce something that I think is going to be good.
Yeah, I'm starting to get excited about that, but I definitely don't. I've never approached a record um, intentionally trying to do that. It's more of just like being jaded, and um, if I know what I'm doing, it gets boring or something. And so I end up like inadvertently having to like go through some like probably emotionally like traumatic experience before I can actually start on the record. Like
So
yeah, making this last record was definitely an example of that. But yeah, that's what's so beautiful about the first one was it was just like my first go. So I didn't have to.
you
It was
spent
all
18,
new.
you said you spent around like a year and a half on this record, and you had a couple of songs written. Did you have all the songs written before, or did you like actually write them in the process?
Yeah, totally in the process. Um, I think Evening Blues is on there, and I think that's the only song that was written on a guitar and like was a song before it was recorded.
Wow. It is honestly amazing to hear you describe your headspace in recording this record that way, because the finished product is such a beautiful, cohesive album that sounds like completely coming from a seasoned professional. So to hear you say that you had no idea what you were doing and you were just kind of trying to figure it out is like really surprising.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I had the time to do it because I didn't I didn't even I hadn't even considered like doing music as my life at that point. It was just fully like having fun and doing something like fully for myself. But also, yeah, I mean, I literally just got obsessed with it. That's pretty much what it boils down to. I, I just redid everything over and over and over and over. And I kind of feel like I'm really thankful for that experience because I do feel like most of the time when people are learning how to record, it there's also some outside pressure that's forcing a certain like time frame to happen. Like
Right.
you got bands coming in and they're only going to pay for like a week and you got to like figure it out. And then like after 10 albums, you know what you're doing or something. But I just had the time and the willingness to keep fixing it over and over and over.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the notes that I had about this record is I feel like I have this conversation so many times with bands about like the diminishing returns of like fine tuning and tinkering around with a record that's already made. It's kind of the argument of like adding brush strokes to an already finished painting. And I'm always when like asked for advice on this, I'm always like on the side of you should put it out earlier than you think because you're always going to be your harshest critic. But then because of you and this record and also the one that the new one, I always have to add the caveat of like, but also like Garrett spent like 18 months on his first record and it went really, really well. It seemed to work out for him. So what do I know, man? Different strokes for different folks, I guess.
I think it depends on the type of record it is.
Sure.
And also on the personality of the person. I mean, I'm not going to say which songs they are, but I've overworked songs. And like I've I've spent a lot of time on something only to go back to the demo, which honestly is part of probably what happened on this first record as well. Like that was what the time afforded me to do, was to like go really far and then be like, oh yeah, like 6 months ago I was in a better spot. But I also like, one thing that happened was, this is kind of funny. I had two different like pretty big mix engineers mix two different songs on the record because I thought I was going to get the whole thing mixed, and both of the mixes I hated so much. And like I didn't handle it well either. I like the guy called me, one of the guys who I used on a song on my last record actually, and he was like so stoked. He's like, I got the mix in the folder, man. Go check it out and give me a call. I'm really stoked on it. And so I listened to it and I called him back and I was like, yeah, I don't like it at all, man. Which is like not the way to do that at all.
Yeah, right.
But
gotta go lot of tact there.
Gotta go compliment Sandwich. Be like, I like what you did about this. It's basically all shit, but I really like the work that you put in, man.
Yeah. Well, and then the ironic part is that I found those mixes a couple months ago, and they're just like so much better than my mix. But I was so like close to the project that I couldn't.
You need to call. You need to call that guy and tell him, and just to boost his spirits a little bit.
I don't think he remembers actually, because he mixed a song on my new record, and he was like really nice to me. So I'll just let that live in the past.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what's interesting though is that this record has some themes that go kind of throughout it. There's a handful of things that stick out to me about it. Is recording wise, it's hard because like Garrett, you know, I've been a part of the music you've put out for a while, and I've seen the progression of it, and this is for all of us kind of revisiting that first part, but really kind of comparing it to where your sounds are now. Like, it's super organic. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of really organic tones and instruments and production to it, whether intentional or not. But it also has something that Kent and I were talking about earlier, is like, it has this interesting cinematic feel to it that, like, if I were to describe it as a genre, I think I might more describe it as a cinematic genre than I would an actual musical genre. And I think that's really hard to pinpoint. I don't know if that was intentional in the way that you guys recorded those songs and you were going for something, and maybe there's influence from the album artwork, but like, it definitely has this like moody, like Western feel to it.
Yeah. That was not intentional. And actually the album was done when the album art came to be. My friend, my roommate at the time, had found that photo, and it was just the bottom of it, and he wanted to get it tattooed on him. And I was like, dude, that's going to look terrible.
It would be a bad tattoo, like, to be fair.
It's too much detail. It's just not going to work. But I ended up finding the artist, and then he like filled in the rest of it for me. But yeah, I mean, with the organic thing, two things come to mind. One, I literally didn't know how to do anything else. So, well, I mean, I didn't have any synthesizers or anything like that. But also, I was, especially at the time, really inspired by like physical spaces. And like that, the house I was in recording had a bunch of like natural reverb and stuff. So I was always kind of utilizing that.
It has a super live feel to it. The whole recording has a very live feel to it.
Yeah, that's cool. I used a lot of room mics. And I was going for that. Yeah, I don't know how the sound came to be. It's interesting because the next thing I was not intentional with that at all, and not on the next one either. And it's weird how the next one kind of ended up being like Americana, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But it was the same like unintentional process. I think it just like had to do with my other interests at the time. I was obsessed with vintage Gibson guitars. So I wanted those all over it, which happened. I like ran into this girl that could play violin really well. So she ended up all over it.
There's a lot of strings in it.
Yeah. And then like Aaron, who was the drummer in the band at the time, didn't know how to play like softly. So it just got big. Like anytime we would like try and like build a groove or something, he was just smashing away. And so
that's something I mentioned to Kent earlier. I was like, man, this record, if there's one musical device I feel like they really explored, was probably dynamics. Like I hear dynamic like devices throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not subtle at all. When I listened to it a minute ago, because I hadn't in so long, and I do remember like the first song on there is called Veil, and it has this like ruckus chorus, and I vividly remember that song being inspired by The Chain on Rumors, the Fleetwood Mac record.
Yeah.
And that's the first song I ever heard on vinyl, and I had just connected with it. And they have like a really hard chorus. Theirs is much more like tasteful and like soft, but the way their music translated to me at that time was like really hard hitting. Yeah. So I guess that's how that happened.
Well, you know what? There were some things that I never picked up on the first couple listens that I feel like once Mike remixed it, there was parts I didn't even hear before.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? That process like for you? You obviously put out the record in 2014. The vinyl didn't come out. What year did the vinyl come out? 2017?
Probably 16 or 17.
So when I first listened to the record, there was things that when Mike remixed the record, I started to pick up on that I never even heard the first time. So like, for example, like there was a couple of keys parts that David did that like just added like this weird like bluesy nuance to a couple of songs that I didn't even notice. And I feel like that the remix that Mike did it just highlighted a lot of sounds. What was that process like for you to have like 3 years later or whatever, 3 years later, having it remixed and revisited? What did it do for you?
It was interesting because so he was the engineer that mixed Steady Now, and he was also working with the label that released Steady Now, and he just loved that record, so wanted to remix it and get it mastered. It was interesting because, well, yeah, I mean, he made it way more like full spectrum sonically, a lot brighter and a lot lower.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he made me sound like a better vocalist at times, which was an interesting learning experience, like knowing that like mixing can do that. I didn't really realize how much power that could have. But honestly, one of the big things I learned was how do I say it? Well, so anytime I get a song mixed, like I mixed my last record, and I kind of don't really know how I'm going to go about that in the future, because I can go either way with getting it mixed or doing it myself. But either way, when I get it mixed, it's always a tough struggle, because like you've sat with the song for so long and then someone changes it. And even if it's better, you can't always hear that it's better because it's just different and kind of scary. But the fact that record at that point in time was like 2 or 3 years old, I didn't have any of that. And so it just all sounded way better to me. And that was a great learning experience, because it made me realize how much like subjectivity I'm bringing to people mixing my music. And
so because it was a couple years after the fact, you were far enough removed from being so deeply embedded in your own project that you were kind of able to listen with fresh ears on somebody else's mix.
Yeah, and to do whatever I can in the future to try and like recreate that situation when I get something mixed. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't listening when I mixed it. I mean, I will say this, like when I listen to my mixes, which are what are on Spotify, actually, the vinyl is the new mixes, and I'm really glad it's on vinyl because it just vinyl just needs a little bit higher quality to sound better. But the stuff on Spotify is mine, and I kind of love my mixes because they're amateur, which is like what the record is in a lot of ways.
Right.
So I'm attached to them, but also his are great on the vinyl. I was gonna say something and I completely lost my train of thought.
Man, I'm excited about listening to this vinyl now. The vinyl is really good, and I remember when they sent us over those mixes, I was like, it just brightened a lot of parts up.
Yeah.
It made the songs stand out, and the songs are great. Both like I said, there's a lot of dynamics involved in a lot of the songs. There's a lot of really interesting tones that kind of give it a cinematic feel to it. And then I think lyrically, I kind of looked back at just like the structure of the lyrics, and it's got a more poetic kind of structure to it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
What was your approach to lyrics? I remember when we first started talking about music, you were studying lyrics and songwriting. I mean, you were reading a couple of books about it, I believe. But what was that like for you, and like what is your approach to lyrics now?
Let's see. At that time, I was pretty interested in more like ancient sounding things, like it was more, yeah, you're right, it was more poetic. But it's for the most part, it was all, and I still kind of do this, it's just like stream of consciousness. So I would get some kind of idea or more of a feeling than anything, like and I would just kind of riff off of that for hours and into the microphone. So like a lot of those lyrics are what's on the record is the first time I ever sing that part, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I just feelings, like the song Townsend was, I used to always get this like really intense feeling of like nostalgia, but also kind of a dark feeling when I went to the mountains, like the smallness of like being in the creation, I guess. And so I was just kind of riffing off of that feeling. And yeah, I don't know, like Veil is about the tabernacle. I was grappling with a lot of like hardcore Christian stuff at the time, and like getting into the nitty gritty of some of like the Old Testament was like really confusing to me at the time. And so Veil is about the, I guess it's in Exodus, I don't remember. The tabernacle, the way it's described and how specific everything is, was so bizarre to me. And it also sounded scary as hell. And so that's what the song is about, basically. Like approaching that veil that they talk about and just been like, good God, this is going to be insane.
some Indiana Jones stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm just like, wait, what do you mean?
Yeah. And then
We're all gonna melt if we look at it.
recently, though, lyrically, I've kind of been a lot more personal with it. And I don't know. I don't think that's the future of my writing necessarily, but it felt like something I had to do. I had a catastrophically bad acid trip making this last record, and
Interesting.
it like
What is the title of that record, by the way?
it's called Push-Ups, and it's pulled from the bad LSD trip. I was kind of exploring new like versions of spirituality for me at the time. Decided to go deep one night, and I'm not really a druggie, but I definitely did a lot of drugs that day.
In particular.
And I had a great experience, stayed up all night, and towards the morning decided to do some push-ups to wear myself out. And for some reason, I guess through exhaustion, the push-ups caused me to have a panic attack or like an adrenaline rush, and basically threw me into the craziest year of my life. And so that's why those lyrics ended up being way more emotional and like personal. I guess because I was just working through what the fuck had happened to me.
Did you have that specifically in mind earlier when you referenced like maybe sometimes I need to go through a traumatic experience to write something good?
You know, Kent, that's a good perspective. I didn't really think about it that way. I was having a hard time making the record though. I was probably halfway into it. And when I referenced like thinking I know what I'm doing, meaning I'm in a bad place, that's kind of what was going on. I had a lot of life changes at that time though. Like my spirituality was changing. My I had just done my first full year of touring and gotten married. I got married.
And I remember talking to you about that tour. Touring life is hard.
It's pretty intense, yeah.
Yeah, it can be grueling.
I was doing mostly solo stuff. I was opening for other bands, but I was doing playing solo, so I was alone a lot. But like I got married in May, and I think I played like 135 shows before the year ended.
That was a
But
stout
and the
pace.
most shows I'd ever played, I did the 150 that year, and because I'd played some before, and the most shows I'd ever played in a year before that was 10. 10 in a year anyway.
That's that's quite a jump.
So yeah, that's
So
traumatic.
yeah, I mean, but it was also great. Like doors were being opened for me. You know, the EP was, I mean, my first record was getting like more attention, like got into some movies and stuff. And so like all these doors were opening. And so I went into this next record thinking like, oh, I know exactly what to do. Like I'm going to make a Spotify banger and like just keep it going. And I got in there and like it just didn't happen. And I had a few musical experiences that like kind of freaked me out, I guess. Like everything I had done up to this point was in isolation. So out at that lake house, basically. And then now I'm like bringing in people to work with, and like brought in like someone to co-produce the record, and something about the presence of the other, so to speak, with making music, like shut me down, and I didn't handle it well. And then a lot of that came out when I had that bad LSD trip.
It all built up, and that was just a bottle cap busting.
Pretty much. Yeah, I wasn't aware of a lot of it until that moment. And I think mainly what it was like, I literally, so I didn't explain this, like after the push-ups and the acid trip, I'd been tripping for like 10 hours at this point, but I'd taken so much that after the push-ups, I kind of went back in. Like I thought it was over, and then I went back in for like another like 20 hours or something. So I didn't sleep for like 72 hours. And so,
Oh my gosh.
and it was, I mean, I'm making light of it now, but it was definitely the worst thing that's ever happened to me, but like bar none. And so then I finally went to sleep like freaking like 2 days later or something, and after like 3 or 4 days, started feeling pretty good or like decently normal, and then I think like a week later, I had a kind of a like a I went up to New York actually. And I definitely like partied a lot, like drank a lot with my friends. Not crazy at all, but just didn't get a lot of good sleep. And on the way home, it was daylight savings, so I lost an hour of sleep. And I got back home and was like the tiredest I'd ever been. Lay down, put my head to the pillow, and I can't sleep. And then all of a sudden, like I'm getting all these like rapid fire, like dark images anytime I close my eyes. And that was the first time I'd started experiencing PTSD from the trip. Somehow I like recovered and for 2 weeks was fine. But then, and from that moment on, I was experiencing like heavy PTSD for 6 months. So I didn't really sleep any more than like an hour at a time for like 6 months. It was radical.
Are you continuing to work on the record through this whole period? Or did you just kind of like shelf it and just like, I need to get through this?
Yeah. There's a lot of things that happened. I mean, like 6 months prior to that, I signed a record deal with Sony, and they signed these demos that I had that like it's kind of confusing, but like I didn't really know that they wanted those songs, and I had already kind of changed my mind on those songs. So like I made a record basically. Sony signed.
That's the record you shelved.
Yeah. Sony signed me, and then I like didn't want to work on those songs anymore. So that's kind of some of that weight is what I was bringing into the acid trip. So I think when the trip happened, I probably had like 3 or 4 songs maybe that made the record. But they weren't done at all. Like maybe there was like a verse. I don't remember. I do know that making that record took way too fucking long. So I doubt I was working on it very intensely at that time. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's weird because like recovering from that experience, it got so entangled with finishing the record that it became a really unhealthy situation in and of itself. Like I kind of felt like I probably should have stopped working on it, but I just persisted and really inefficiently worked on it for like 2 more years or something.
That's push-ups.
That's
right?
push-ups, yeah.
Yeah.
Which,
and hopefully, what I would love is that we do this record. We're gonna have a combo on our website if you want to buy both the original full length and the EP right now for this Beer Me That Vinyl. But what I would like to see is both this time doing the combo of the EP and the original, and then once you do have vinyl for that Push-Ups record, I would love to have you back on Beer Me That Vinyl for that vinyl as well.
absolutely.
Because I think that would be really cool. First repeat, we're committed to it now, people.
I'm on board with that. Hey, somewhere before all of that, you mentioned something very briefly that I definitely wanted to get back to, and that is getting a movie placement from this first record. It was Feather was the end credits song for Wind River.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to kind of talk a little bit about that, but first I just want to kind of roll through the accolades and like how big of a movie this was. It was starring Jeremy Renner, 2-time Oscar nominee, Elizabeth Olsen, who was a burgeoning star at the time, is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The director, Taylor Sheridan, won Best Director at Cannes, at the Cannes Film Festival for this film. The entire original motion picture soundtrack was done by Nick Cave. And rather than choose one of his songs for the end credit title, they chose Feather, the last song on this record. And it was fucking beautiful. Like, the movie is incredible. It's shot really beautifully, and it just like fits so well at the end of that movie.
Worry been breaking in, bringing me down, and counting all the times that I fall. When my time comes, I won't be counting it all. I feel all my filth when I look in your eyes.
What did that look like? Was it the director that handpicked the song and came to you, or was there like a production assistant that reached out? How did all of that go down?
Yeah, so at that point in time, I had music in little tiny things before. And so I was at my studio working on, that was like 3 years ago. Wow. I don't remember what I was working on. Anyways, the music director, the music director for the film called me, and she was like, "Hey, we want to use your song in our movie. Like, our budget's not that great, but we really want to use it if you're okay with it." And I'd received calls like this before, and also like you get a lot of gimmicky stuff when you're doing, like, a lot of people will send you emails like asking you to use your stuff, and it's like not real, and it's like, we want to use your song, like if you fill out this $20 submission fee,
Right,
then
yeah.
you can. And so I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, that sounds good. And so I sent it to my manager, and then he called me like 15 minutes later, and he was like, "Did you read this?" And I was like, "No, I didn't." And so that's when I realized that how big of a deal it was. And yeah, like her saying their budget was shot, she was talking about like for like a big Hollywood film. So
Right.
it was a nice paycheck. But yeah, and then I basically learned that it was Taylor, the director, that he's a big fan. This came to me later, but like when I first started William Wild, I got followed on Instagram by this person that had like 100,000 followers or something. And I didn't really pay attention to it, but it ended up being him. And I don't know how he found my music, but he did from a really early point. And yeah, he's great. He's used my stuff in Yellowstone, like 3 or 4 placements in his new show Yellowstone. And we've communicated back and forth a little bit. I sent him a care package one time and he wrote me a letter back, and yeah, he's a great guy. I'm so thankful for him. I mean, that was a big moment because it was super empowering, and also like helped me fund, my studio, and made me feel like I was doing something, which in turn made me do something.
Right. How he found you, I guess, may remain a mystery, but why he was attracted to you, like, as you were talking about making this record, a lot of things kind of dinged in my mind of like, you talk about being inspired by settings, by places, and his I don't know enough about film to correctly say what I'm trying to say right now. His whole cinematography is so based on like these beautiful, lush landscapes. Wind River is beautifully shot, and it's all and oh god, I can't even remember, but it's beautiful snowy mountains. And we talking about like how the record is cinematic and plays a lot with dynamics and has all these peaks and valleys. It plays like a movie, so it totally makes sense why a film producer would be attracted to this record. I guess how he found you so early on Instagram is more the mystery here, but I mean, it fits super well, and it's so amazing. Anybody who's never seen that movie, I would highly recommend it. It's fantastic.
I didn't realize how big of a deal it was, which is funny because I remember you telling me about this placement, Garrett. You telling me about this placement, and as we were doing a little research for this podcast, Kent was reading me the cast, and I was like, "Oh shit! Like, oh, why didn't he ever tell me any of this stuff?" Like, I don't know. It's just funny to kind of look back on it. Now I'm gonna, if we could do a Beer Me That Vinyl that also had a movie, maybe we'll. Maybe it's streaming somewhere now. Who knows?
It was on
Maybe.
Netflix for
Probably
a while,
not.
which
Oh,
worked
really?
out great for me as well, because collect for that.
Yeah.
But I didn't tell you about it because it took me a long time to realize that it was a big deal.
That's why, because you didn't know.
I mean,
yeah.
you don't really get paid until like way late on that stuff.
6 to 8 months later. At the
Yeah.
earliest.
So the movie was
Yeah.
already out, and I didn't see it in theaters because I don't know. For some reason, I didn't really care. But I ended up watching it on Netflix like a year after it came out. And the movie is so good. By the end of the movie, I completely forgot that my song was in it. And like,
Did your song surprise you when it came up?
You're like, oh wait,
it's
that's
like
my song.
it's one of the craziest parts of the movie. Like, there's this insane scene that happens, and then at the very end, like the two main characters are talking with each other, and it's like this really emotional moment. And then all of a sudden, the credits roll, and you're like blown away by the movie. And then when I hear the guitar start coming in, I literally started dying laughing. Like, not making fun of it. Like, it was emotional for me too. Like, it honestly,
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah, I'm sure it
You
was
were
just
just
a
like-
trip.
It
Yeah.
was one of those things where you're like, what am I doing in this moment?
Right. Yeah. Totally.
That's really, you know what though? That's really cool and humbling to just be included in a project like that.
Absolutely, man. I was honored.
And I get super excited when people I know get placements on TV and movies. Like Caleb Hawley had that one on some like BET show.
Yeah,
And that was-
what's the Drumline 2? Drumline
No
2.
Drumline
way.
2. Yeah, and
Yeah.
That is
It's like a pretty big
no,
part.
it wasn't the movie. It was like the series based on the movie.
No, it was a movie. It was a movie
you
for
would know.
TV,
You were his
but,
manager.
But it was
Um,
like a big kissing scene. It was like a minute-long little section. It was a huge deal.
And then Evie Andrews, fiddle player here in Knoxville, had a song on an HBO series that came out this year based on a Stephen King novel called The Outsider. And I was like texting everybody. I love like name dropping. I did the same thing with Wind River. I was like, guys, my friend has a song in this movie.
Watch
You
this
gotta
movie.
watch this movie.
yeah, man.
Yeah, it was
It's
super
so
cool.
cool because, I mean, first of all, it's good money for the artist, but also it's really cool to like make something. It comes from a certain place, right? And then it goes out into the world and it's not really yours anymore. And then seeing it get
Right.
put on something that's like truly not yours and it's coming from a probably a completely different place. It's beautiful. They should
Yeah.
do that with more of my music.
Listen, all you filmmakers.
No
out
arguments
there.
here. Totally agree.
Okay, so this is William Wild. Then we had Steady Now, and then we had Push Ups. And are you working on new stuff now?
I am. I'm being very relaxed about it because I don't want to. My goal is to find that I have made another record.
Okay, I kind
I
of like
love
that
that.
approach. I'll be interested to see what it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm settling into. It's a very different lifestyle, and especially in Knoxville, it's very different. And I think part of what I loved about learning how to record and write and stuff was was the discovery, like I said before, and the ease at which it happened and how eager I was to work on it. And I'm just trying to create that in my life. It's easy to like put a deadline on stuff, and it's necessary to at times as well. But yeah, I'm just trying to be chill. I think it'll be better. I think it'll be better to do that.
I'm convinced no matter what kind of setting you're in, you're going to put out good music. I think that you're the harshest critic, but every setting that you've been put in so far, something good has come from it. So
I appreciate that.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah, batting 1,000 in my view. Well, guys, I think that's Beer Me That Vinyl episode 2.
Oh
We
yeah,
did it. So before we go, I want to hear your. So when we picked the beer this week, we have Crafty Bastard, Hop Candy. It's going to be a variety. I don't know what the second beer is going to be, but Hop Candy is going to be in it. Tell me about your relationship with Crafty Bastard and with Hop Candy, because I know that was one on your list.
I used to live in 4th and Gill, and they are right next to 4th and Gill, so we would walk there from time to time. I love how shitty that place is. It's like, yeah, and I mean that in the best way. It's so.
You're not referring to the beer. You're referring to
the beer's incredible. Yeah, and I always forget that it's. Well, I don't forget it's high gravity, because high gravity beer just has a specific flavor, but like, you know, one of those things on an empty stomach and you're in a good spot.
Yeah.
It'll get you there.
But yeah, I love that place. I love the idea of a micro brewery. I think they're really intentional, and the Hop Candies, it's beautiful. I love the name. The name is what made me get it, and the flavor is what made me stay.
Come for the name, stay for the taste.
They're not afraid to take risks either from a brewery's perspective, and I feel like that aligns with your music really well. Is that like you're willing to try stuff, and
yeah,
so
totally.
are they. And I think that's kind of cool that they line up like
yeah,
that.
when I heard this was the beer that was going to be paired with your record, I was like, that's perfect. There probably is not a better fit.
And they love vinyl. They've got a vinyl record player at their bar.
That's true.
Bar. So I'm going to have to give them a copy of this record, and hopefully when all this starts to open up, they'll start spinning it.
Hell yeah.
But
well, I'm sure their brewers will be stoked to jam on it in the meantime.
Gosh,
yeah.
Yeah. So, well, we're going to have them on here hopefully tomorrow, and we'll talk about your music to them and talk about their beer. But we're really excited. I think the pairing is real. I'm really excited about it. It's, oh man, we got lucky. The first two have been really strong.
Yeah.
So thanks for letting us start this thing strong.
No problem.
All right.
Oh man. Well, thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Go team.
So we have Aaron here from Crafty Bastard.
Limit my swearing.
No,
You don't have to.
Okay.
say whatever the fuck you want, man.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we have the F-bomb.
I've got the potty mouth of the bunch.
Yeah, he does. I rarely cuss. But we actually have 2 beers here. I was fortunate enough to pick them up for the interview, which I'm actually kind of excited about. I'm gonna pop them open. You don't have to drink it if you don't want to, but I got these little glasses from Knox Brew Tours. Shout out to Zach and his Knox Brew Tour business. But I want to pop one open while we're talking. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's go for it.
Which one? You
Hop
think we
candy,
should start with a hop
for sure.
candy?
Yep.
That's the one that Garrett specifically said he
Yeah.
loves. So
Yeah. And definitely on the next one, make sure you get like the
get the
like
pop.
while we're talking.
Yes.
The tessellation, and you get the crack in there and the pour too.
So tell us a little bit about Crafty Bastard. Obviously, I think I was there one of the first couple of weeks when it opened. So it's one of the older breweries in Knoxville, but
Yes, certainly. So, so Crafty Bastard, our first day was August 29th of 2015. I remember that specifically because it was Emery Place block party.
that's right.
And
Oh yeah,
so-
we had Sunset on Central. When the Hop Candy went down the wrong pipe. It's these tiny glasses. Yeah, that Emery Place block party was the same day as Sunset on Central, just down the street.
I don't know if it was. Did we do it in 2015?
Mhm.
Oh, we
It was like the first one.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was, we opened that day because we were completely out of money, and we were the only place in Emery Place that sold beer. So we were like, okay, this has to happen.
Yeah.
So it was this mad rush to get open by that date, and we were able to do it. So that was our very first day. It was kind of started on it in early 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Had the idea of opening kind of a casual pint-ish thing where we sold other people's beer, had taps, had to-goes, but in more of the crafty atmosphere.
Mhm.
So anybody who has been to Crafty knows exactly what I mean when I say that. If you haven't,
Yeah.
it's old warehouse,
Yeah.
plastered walls, bare brick,
Garage doors.
It's got kind of a
dome.
dive bar feel, but it's a
For
brewery, so it's
sure.
a dive brewery.
For sure, like
But a homey dive, like
Yeah,
one that
homey
you
dive, for
want to
sure.
be at.
Yeah. Certainly very friendly, very welcoming dive.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a dive. Beautiful dive. in
Yeah,
my opinion.
great neighborhood spot.
Great neighborhood spot, and that's what we wanted to create. We wanted to create a neighborhood place for Fourth and Gill because at that time, when we first started, Hops and Hollers was not open. You did have flats and taps, and you did have the stuff in the old city, but there was nowhere you could walk to that was what I really considered in Fourth and Gill, like a real Fourth and Gill neighborhood.
Right.
So that was, and given the nature of Fourth and Gill, and I had lived there for years before and years after the brewery opened. I mean, about 3 blocks away. Given the nature of Fourth and Gill, given the if you've ever been to anything at the Birdhouse, which I'm sure many people listening have, like you know the kind of funky eclecticism that that is Fourth and Gill, and so we wanted a bar that expressed that, and I think from all the different artists that we have, both musical and visual, and our staff and our beers certainly kind of are right at home in that neighborhood.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it seems like a really tight-knit group.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? When you walk in there, every brewery has its own culture, but it feels like it's definitely like a Cheers bar for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
for sure.
this is home,
sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have had lots of really, really good regulars that have been there since, sometimes a few days to a few months after we opened and, just got hooked,
Yeah.
So dog-friendly, kid-friendly, lots of, and I think one thing, and to tie back into the beer, and this is a really unique 4-pack. We've never done this before. But I think as far as the beer goes, things that keep people coming back is one, they know, we do as many new releases as anybody you'll find. We're at 488 unique beers in just over 4 years.
Holy
Oh my
cow.
gosh.
Yeah, so if you do the math on that, that's 2 to 3 new beers a week.
That's
Yeah.
surprising that one, you've had that many, and two, that you've continued to keep count
Yeah.
that high.
Yeah. What is the number that you're like, well, that seems like enough?
Untapped does it for us.
Oh, that's
okay.
So
Gotcha.
if you're not familiar with that, it's the Yelp of beer, if you will, but individual beers instead of breweries. And so you go to Crafty Bastard, it says 488 beers.
Wow.
But yeah, but one thing I think keeps people coming back, I mean, the atmosphere and the events are a huge, huge part of it. But as far as the beer is strictly concerned, is one, we do so many new things. If you haven't been in a week, there's probably 2 or 3 new things that you haven't tried. And so that's interesting. That's exciting. But there is a legion of regulars at Crafty that are hop candy people, and a legion that are tessellation people. So I feel like a lot of people are like, well, if I don't, if I'm not digging the new thing, if I'm not digging the beaten basil saison or the chai tea milk stout,
I can always go to my trusty.
I've
got
got
my
my mainstay. I
mainstays.
got my tessellation, And so that's what this mixed 4-pack is. It's 2 hop candies and 2 tessellations. And the first one is hop candy.
It is
So-
candy for sure.
Yeah, certainly.
It's delicious.
Yeah. So hop candy is it's one. But actually, both of these were ones I brewed at home years and years before the brewery ever opened. And I anticipated them being our flagships. I did not anticipate them being as huge of a chunk of the sales as they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're really, really good beers. Hop candy is it's not a New England style, but it is closer to that. It has a more
Right.
restrained bitterness. It's a little bit sweeter, a little bit thicker mouthfeel. And it's nice. It ends up being a gateway IPA for a lot of people.
Yes, I could see that.
Yeah, because that's a big pet peeve of mine is people will try this and say, "Oh, I like that. It's not that hoppy."
Mm-hmm.
Which I always like. I have to fight back a little bit. to
I've
just, like,
Yeah.
Zach corrected me on this because I'm that way. I'm not typically an IPA guy, and I think I said something like that near him, and he was like, "Actually, it's not the hoppiness, it's the bitterness." And I was like,
Yeah.
"All right, man."
I've explored IPAs considerably because they're one of my favorite beers, which that's why I was super excited about this. But it's one of those things that I feel like a lot of people that is a common misconception about hops. But this one is super balanced. It's really balanced. It's got a sweet, like almost aftertaste to it, and it it is very approachable for those who may or may not feel comfortable with IPAs. If they're not really sure what they're going to get, this is a safe one, I feel like, to try.
Yeah,
But
certainly. I mean,
but when I say safe, I don't mean like it's boring, because it's very interesting.
yeah, certainly. I think the thing there's a unique hop variety that's used in here. I think another thing that keeps people going back is like once you do get into it, it's not like tessellation. I love tessellation to death. I drink more tessellation than hop candy.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other beer in the mixed pack that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But tessellation is a really good West Coast style IPA, and I've had a lot of things that are very similar. It's very citrusy.
Yeah.
It's got a little kind of grapefruit, kind of a little bit of a tropical fruit kind of thing. It's a very very standard IPA palette. This, on the other hand, it does. I mean, I do get almost a little tangerine, but I almost get like white grape, like almost like a melon cantaloupe kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's so it does have that kind of bright fruitiness that a lot of IPAs have, but not just citrus.
Yeah, and it's not like overtly like sugary or anything like that. It doesn't it's not too sweet. It just has the right balance of sweet.
That's the only thing I don't like about hop candy. The name is it does imply that it's going to be sweet, and it does have a slightly more residual sugar in it than tessellation, but it's still very low. Really, what's giving it that impression of sweetness and that almost like candied fruit,
Right.
is not sugar; it's the hops. Right?
Really.
Right. So yeah, you can. There are many things that give you the impression of sweetness that aren't actually sugar.
What did you say?
So for
hop
example, if
strain
you add
was?
vanilla to anything,
Yeah.
it will make it taste sweeter, even though you're not actually adding sugar.
Yeah.
Right.
What did you say the hop variety was? You had mentioned
I
it's a
can't
kind
tell
of.
you that. I can't. Tell you
It's a special one.
It's a special one. Hop candy. Like I'm very, very open with almost all of my beers.
But that one.
Hop candy, I keep a little secret. Yeah. The tessellation, I will.
That makes it
I
even
will-
more mysterious. I
Yeah.
like that.
I will scan and email you the recipe for tessellation. There's nothing secret about that. That is a I mean, I think it's a great beer. Don't get me wrong.
No, yeah.
But yeah, no, hop candy is more unique, and it's
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you said that there's kind of two factions of regulars. That
Mm-hmm.
is it real beef between them, or is it just like, oh, this is my preference?
sometimes no. Sometimes it's just team hop candy and team tessellation.
Oh, man.
and like,
Oh, we picking teams.
Oh
No,
man,
I've
I
heard-
feel like Ken and I are gonna be on separate teams on this one.
I'm probably gonna be tessellation.
You think so?
Yeah,
Okay.
my favorite kind of IPAs are ones that have a fruity flavor with them.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I mean, to me, the hop candy is very, very fruity as well. It's just like not the typical. It's not the more like citrus and tropical.
Yeah.
This is more like melon and white grape and
Mm-hmm.
almost like cherry kind of thing.
I can't wait to get a hop candy. Like I want to like almost like a soccer team. I'm gonna dress up and just fight some people over there.
We talked about doing like a softball league whenever those are allowed to happen again.
Right.
Yeah, and because I've heard regulars saying that too. It's like, I hate to like whenever somebody will drink one that they almost always drink hop candy, and you'll see them drinking tessellation. And you're like, I had to join Team Tessellation today, and stuff like that.
That's
So,
hilarious.
but yeah, they're by far our two biggest sellers, by far, and they're the only two that we keep on all the time. We have Big Bastard, Imperial Milk Stout, Earl Grey, some other ones that we keep on most of the time. But these are the only two that like people riot when we don't have them on. So I would say for any one of these, you're talking 362 days a year.
Yeah.
Like we'll have them. We may run out for a day or two.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So tell me, before we jump into the next beer, tell me a little bit more about the culture at Crafty. And I know you guys try a lot of stuff. That was one of the things that really drew me to this pairing, was that William Wild, he likes to get experimental with a lot of the sounds on his records.
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys are not afraid to take chances.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, and so certainly we've done some unique pairings like that in the past. We've done a pairing. One of the most interesting ones was with the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like they had a piece of music, and we were supposed to brew a beer inspired by that, and then the beer was going to be drank by the musicians, and then they were going to perform the piece, and then there was a visual artist like composing a painting to it at the same time.
Oh
So,
man, they really went for it.
Yeah, they really went for it. Yeah, they really went for it. We did like a Woodruff dark saison, like we made it like dark and ominous and brooding, and
That's great.
wrote up a really cool description for it and everything. But yeah, so I like doing stuff like that. So
With
like,
that one, did you at all have the urge to make it like a 14% ABV to like mess with them and get them all drunk before they have to perform a symphony piece?
That would have been great. Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'll have to remember that for next time.
Okay, great.
But yeah, so these kind of pairings are something that we're really interested in doing. So to be paired with a musician who's not afraid to take chances either is really cool. And I'm also glad to know that he loves hop candy too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something that I remember we were talking. We interviewed Garrett just a couple days ago, but I was saying like I feel like okay, so brewing is obviously an art in itself. There's a lot of science involved, obviously, but I feel like it's an expression. But with music, like he literally wrote a whole record and just had to abandon it because he was like, it's not good enough. It's not good. It's not what I need it to be. Have you guys ever had the feeling of like making a beer and getting to the end and being like, oh man, this doesn't quite fit what we want it to be?
Yeah, certainly. There have been times, and I will say this: we've never served a beer that like we thought was bad.
Right.
Like this is flawed. There's something wrong with it.
Yeah.
There have been times where this is what we were going for. There's a flavor expression that I had in mind, and it just came out different.
Yeah.
But was still very good.
Sure.
So those beers we still serve.
Yeah. I think that's just the difference in the mediums itself. It's just like like.
Oh, I've done that before. Like my true calling before I got into, I was a math teacher professionally, but my true calling was being a musician. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I've been a songwriter and a guitarist and a bassist in several different bands.
Oh, cool.
And stuff like that. So yes, I'm very familiar with I've never done it with an entire album.
Yeah. That was the first time I'd heard that, but like.
But yeah, gotten to the end of a song like that you've been working on and stuff, and you're just like, it's just this isn't.
Yeah.
This
well,
just
I got that out of my
yeah.
system. Now let's write the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so I've got that. I mean, the difference with you have like a physical.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That you've got to do stuff with.
Yeah.
I know. It's probably more devastating to have spent that much of your, of your passion and your inspiration on something and lose it in the form of a song,
right?
Or just be completely dissatisfied with it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you make a technically sound,
I paid a lot of people a lot of money and a lot of ingredients
exactly
to make this beer, and so if it's good, even if it's not exactly what we were going for,
right? Well, that's what I was saying. Is like there's science behind it. So if it's a technically sound beer, maybe it didn't quite hit the notes that you were hoping to hit, but like it's still a drinkable, good beer.
Yeah.
It's like cool. We'll put that one there, and then we'll make notes for the next one.
That's the one. And when I teach at the Brewing and Distilling Center, I make references to music all the time.
Yeah.
One, because that's a huge passion of mine, and two, because it's something that a lot of people get.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's the thing. I always say there's a formula for making a good beer.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a formula for making a great beer.
Right.
Right. So, and what I mean by that is you keep everything clean, you use fresh ingredients, you follow your techniques and times and procedures, and don't do anything crazy. Yeah, I mean, you will make a good drinkable beer, right?
Yeah.
But what makes something great and memorable that people like only want to drink that kind of thing, or like I can't live without it, which some people are with both of these beers.
Yeah.
That's something in the ether. There's not a formula for that, and that's why I love brewing, is because it's a scientific project, and there's a ton of science and math and chemistry in it, but it is not judged scientifically.
Right.
It is
it's
judged via the palate in the sense.
It's kind of similar to music in the idea that you have to learn all the rules before you know how you can break them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Music in the strictest sense is science too.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely, yeah. But again, that's not how it's created, and that's certainly not how it's enjoyed.
Yeah.
Let's get into this.
Let's do. Kent is. He's like,
I'm ready.
That's all great, guys, but I really want to try this distillation.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna
open it. Open it next to the. There you go.
Open it, but then you're gonna pour it because you're way better at that.
Ah. Oh. Sweet. Here, and let me pour it in front of the mic too. That's very satisfying sound. Okay, so I'm just gonna tempt all the listeners at home This beautiful orange can. No, okay, I'm gonna stop that.
It's like
But anyway,
ASMR or whatever.
Yeah.
This, if you do happen to be listening to this at home on repeat and you have a can in front of you right now, now would be a good time to open it, I would think. But anyway, so Tessellation is this one I can tell you it is all Mosaic hops. If you drink mini IPAs, I'm sure you've heard of Mosaic. It's a very popular hop these days. Gives you kind of bright citrusy notes. I get a lot of mango. Also gives you some dankness. You do get a little pine and a little. Yeah. I don't think I have to describe.
Oh
to
yeah,
anybody
that
what
sounds
dank
good.
means. Occasionally I do when I am giving a tour. I get an old person like, "What does dank mean?" Anyway, so Tessellation, it is just it's has a very. I like to talk about beer and graphs sometimes. It's very driving. It's very linear.
Yeah.
It has a very defined beginning, middle, and end. Whereas Hop Candy's a little softer. It's more of a scatter plot. But anyway, yeah. So really enjoy the Tessellation. It's crisp. It's bright. It's fruity. Has a nice bitterness on the end, but not so much that it
I would never think to describe either one of those beers in a linear or scatterplot way, but that is exactly how I felt about them when I tasted them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. You're the brewer. You're the one that's thinking about this all the time, and
He's
and
also a
knows how
math
to
teacher.
articulate
You're like,
it.
yeah.
Also, math teacher and a musician. Yeah. So I describe beer in weird ways, but it seems to make sense to a lot
It
of
made
people.
it made perfect
It's-
sense. Yeah.
Two sides of the brain too, though. So like you're getting your whole audience there.
Yeah.
Of like, well, they're math oriented people or they're creative, so they're one of these guys will understand what.
Well, that's the thing why I've gravitated to beer so much is because I do have a very strong kind of like math sense, and I'm also very like flighty and artistic too. And so beer's just great for that. I mean, I get to like do all kinds of calculations in chemistry and science and yeast cell counts and there's all kinds of mathy stuff.
And you get to be creative.
And you get to be super creative. I also get to play with pawpaws and vanilla and cinnamon and all these different kind of ingredients. And
That's something I read on your website, that you guys do a lot of local stuff. Like you source a lot from this area.
Yeah, that is. So we just wrote a new thing because we're getting into package now. Oh, and I actually would like to talk about the label on this.
Yeah, please.
On this Tessellation IPA.
It is a beautiful label.
I do want to read you one thing really quick. Just because it reminds me of this. So yeah, we changed our description. It's just kind of a little tag that's going to be on every can. That's going to be on the website and stuff like that. And we simply changed it to located in the 4th and Gill neighborhood of downtown Knoxville. Crafty Bastard Brewery creates both traditional and mischievous beers, carefully crafted with locally sourced ingredients, mad science, and a flair for the dramatic. So that's I think that encapsulates it pretty well. And the reason I mentioned that is because you said locally sourced ingredients. So yeah, prickly pears, pawpaws, chanterelle mushrooms, persimmons, mulberries, things like that. I really like using stuff that you can't get in a grocery store.
Yeah.
Quite often how it happens is there's I know with the pawpaws and persimmons in particular, we have regular customers. One has a pawpaw patch.
Yeah.
And one has a persimmon tree that hangs over his back porch, and they just fall on his porch.
Tell me exactly what a pawpaw is.
Okay, so a pawpaw...
Am I the only one in this room? I'm probably the only one who doesn't know what a pawpaw is.
No, I was only picturing my grandfather.
So there's two things. So when we've had pawpaw beers, people say, "Do you mean pawpaw?" Yeah, right. So we've had that, and then a lot of people think we're meaning papaya.
Oh.
You think it's like thing. But anyway, so pawpaw is also known as hillbilly mangoes. They grow pretty well in southern Appalachia. They're really prevalent in southern Indiana and southern Ohio, but you do find them around here. You generally find them close to rivers and bodies of water. They have these huge frondy leaves on them, and the fruit, I mean, it looks kind of like a papaya because when you cut it open, because it has these big black seeds in it. Well, kinda. But the flesh is like, it has the texture of a banana, but the taste of a mango.
Oh, interesting.
And it is nuts. Both the tree and the fruit, if you were to just be in a patch of this, you would swear you were in South Vietnam or Brazil.
Really?
Or something like that. It just does not look like something that belongs in the mountains.
Yeah.
But it does. It grows around here. And it is absolutely insane. We have a Pawpaw Sour that we're releasing May 4th. And it's one of my favorite beers that we've ever done. So.
I need to get in on that.
It's
Sours
really,
are my jam.
It's really good. And like I said, it's got this kind of banana mango thing and this weird kind of funk, like really good funk that plays incredibly well with the sour. Those are really, really interesting. And the reason you can't get them in a store is much like persimmons, their ripe to rot time is hours.
Oh, really?
Right. So there'll be one of those things that they're like bitter and astringent and like rock hard, just completely unusable. And then, like ripen and fall off the tree and turn to mush and be eaten by ants in an hour. Like there's nothing like that. Persimmons are that way too. If you ever eaten an unripe persimmon, it will suck the moisture out of your mouth like nothing you've ever tasted. It's the most astringent thing in the world. And one day later, it will be gushy and having fallen on the ground and eaten by all the wild animals. Like,
That's
so
crazy.
the only way we get persimmons is the guy has this huge persimmon tree and it overhangs his porch. So they fall on the porch instead of on the ground. If they fall on the ground, they get eaten instantly.
So what's the deal? Is it like a mad rush to get them to you so you can get them in?
They take them and freeze them.
Oh,
So every day, so that's
smart.
Yeah. So what they do every both of the guys who bring me those, and shout out to Barry for the pawpaws and Don for the persimmons. They just go out every morning and collect.
Yeah.
And put them in Ziploc bags and freeze them.
That's so cool.
And so surprisingly, like I know there's maybe some kind of lack of romance to freezing them because there's some kind of none, but I call horseshit on that.
I mean, the fact that you're just using these rare things to begin with, I feel like is enough.
Yeah, you're using fruits that I had never heard of until about
sorry that
3 minutes
it
ago.
goes bad in hours. What do you want from me? Come on.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have to freeze them. The really cool thing about freezing fruit before you use it, though, is I'm sure anybody who's like thawed out something that was frozen, any kind of vegetable or plant matter, it turns to mush.
Yeah.
After you freeze it because it breaks the cell walls.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually really good because when you put it in the beer,
that's what you need for the beer, right?
It turns it's more goopy and so like it infuses into the beer much better.
Now, do you have to let it thaw before you put it in there, or do you just throw it in there cold?
Generally let it thaw, but
yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
generally you throw it into the beer.
Seems like a question people would ask. I'm not sure.
And when you're throwing it into the beer, it's we're letting it ferment at like room temperature.
Okay.
Right. So it's still warm. So you could throw it in there cold. It would lower the overall temperature of the beer a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, yeah. So generally,
you know more than me. I just that was one of the things I thought. I was like, I wonder if that affects the process of it with the temperature, depending on what part of the process.
It would
you put
depend
in
if
there,
you're using a ton. It depends on how aggressive the fruit is, right? So raspberries, extraordinarily aggressive. Not a very small, but a mild to moderate amount of raspberries can produce a ton of flavor. Whereas like peach, surprisingly enough, very, very nice flavor of peach, but it's a more subtle flavor, and peaches are very watery. So yeah, you have to use a ton of peach, like maybe like on the order of 5
millions of peaches for me.
beer name.
Oh man,
I'm full of these kind of jokes after I've had half a beer. So you're all welcome, or I'm very sorry, depending on.
Yeah.
What? So let me take a poll. Team Candy or Team Hop Tessellation?
You know what? In a surprise move, I'm actually going to sign with Team Hop Candy.
I knew you would. Because I secretly picked up a 4-pack before this, so the other 2 of these have already been drank, and I was like, Kent's gonna like this one, and I said the Hop Candy. This one is more of like what I typically drink. I love them both, but if you were like, listen, Garrett, you can only have one, it'd probably be Tessellation. I'd probably be a Tessellation drinker.
Yeah.
I love both of them as well, especially for a guy who is a self-proclaimed not an IPA guy.
Yeah.
Like they're both great.
Yeah, we're gonna do another little top off here. And let's talk about. Okay, so I guess the last thing I really wanted to hit on.
Yeah, you got it. Go ahead. Again, I already had 2, so.
So, last thing I wanted to talk about too is actually, I guess a little bit about canning process and also the label on here. It'll take just a few minutes, but yeah. So for those of you that buy the 4-pack, and the 4-packs of just the Tessellation are available at the brewery as well. But whether you buy that or whether you buy the mixed 4-pack, you will see this Tessellation IPA that's got a really, really nice label on it. The reason it does is because we got a canning line in. So Ironheart, they do mobile canning.
Nice.
And so it's a fully automated 4-head filler. It's this crazy thing, able to pump out thousands of cans an hour.
That's a lot of cans.
It's nuts, yeah. The hop candy, on the other hand, that's in your mixed 4-pack, was done one at a time by hand on an electric machine, which is much like an electric can opener, but an electric can seamer.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a hell of a lot of labor.
A lot of love in that one.
Yeah, a lot of love and a lot of labor that goes into that one. But the really cool thing about this is, yeah, we do have, we have Tessellation stocked ready for you to come get. And also the, we got a label design, and it was really nice. Worked with several different people, and so Rachel Allen of Release Designs has been doing some work with our labels. Taryn Farrow, who does our social media and stuff, also had some really good ideas too. But anyway,
and we've got photos from Taryn as well that'll be on the website. So that's I just wanted to mention that she had just sent them to me, and she's a great photographer.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic.
You got a lot of talent over there.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, and really, really excited about that. And like I said, yeah, the Rachel Allen at Release Design. So we're working on a lot of different labels too. So in the future, if you like the look of this can, we'll probably have hot candy in a nicer label, and some of our sours and other things as well. So that's just something to be looking forward to in the future.
Awesome, man.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a beautiful label. The whole thing's gonna be a real vibe. Like being able to open the vinyl record and pour you some of this beer out of the beautiful can. It's I'm excited to participate in this one, as well as get it out to the people.
Yeah, I have already partaken in the pairing earlier this week, and it was a good experience. So they go well together, and the music is super cinematic and like just mellow, and I feel like the beer kind of fits that as well. It's got a really approachable flavor to it. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean that's the thing too. I mean think about the kind of music you want to listen to. Well, I mean I think some people on the surface would be like, oh, this is the most pretentious shit ever, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
That was a literal comment.
Yeah.
From a Reddit post when we tried to share it on Reddit. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, if you think about it, I mean, no, it's not silly. I mean, think about what kind of music would make you want to, reach for a glass of red wine, and what makes you want to have some whiskey on the rocks, and what I think it is a very natural thing. I mean, they both flavors and both sounds are going to affect your mood and stuff like that. So
yeah.
I think it does make sense actually to pair what you're drinking with what you're listening to.
Yeah, we say it all the time. Music is very much in the beer world. Beer is very much in the music world, and at least the live music industry does not exist without beer.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
this is why we paired them together.
Oh yeah,
man! Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us, and getting nerdy about beer with us.
Yeah, and so where
anytime.
else can people find information about Crafty Bastard?
So definitely keep up with us on the Facebook and Instagram. Are probably the two best places. Facebook, I would say, maybe the best. The website. So right now we're still doing to-goes only. That'll be at least to the end of March, it seems. May. At least till the end of May, and we keep a very updated, very detailed list of what we have to go on the website.
Okay.
So first, a downtown to go list. It's right there, and I mean, something blows. Like, I mean, we might forget about it for 15 minutes, but it is up to date and accurate. And you can call the number on there, 333-4760, and place orders. We're open 2 to 8 every day. And we're releasing new beers constantly.
Yeah.
There's a sour series every Monday. There's a ivory stout where we have like cheesecake and banana pudding flavors and stuff like that every Tuesday. And we got 4-packs of IPA cans, crowlers, growlers, bottles, everything you want.
I want to clarify for the listeners, because you guys have 2 locations now, right?
Yes, we have 2 locations. I mean, currently only one because the west location is that is shut down.
So when we do the pickup for these, they're probably going to want to come to. We're going to be at the downtown.
We're
location.
going to be at the downtown location.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does occasionally. People do occasionally get confused on that, but yes, downtown location, 6 Emery Place. That's the only place for to-goes right now. We are doing deliveries, though. I will say we are doing deliveries out west to serve our customers for when we are open. So West every Thursday. So good luck, Taryn and Leslie, if you're out there doing deliveries. Actually, you are out there doing deliveries.
It's Thursday, yeah.
It's Thursday, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is Thursday, April 30th, by the
Yeah.
way, for if anybody's listening to this after the fact. But but anyway, yeah. So we do that every Thursday. Take orders Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Adeem, the artist.
Good friend of ours. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So he plays. So you might be familiar with the singing deliveries. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can request a song with your delivery, and they'll all pull up together and deliver you your beer and sing a song. They're also doing those deliveries now in the not downtown necessarily, but in within 6 to 8 miles on Sundays.
Okay.
And if you want to help me get some exercise and get some experimental beer from your local brewer, on Saturdays I do bike deliveries. So anywhere within a 6 mile radius.
Get that cardio in.
Yeah, I got a couple weeks ago. I got 35 miles in.
Dang, that's no joke. Coming back and forth 6 miles. That's
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah, well, I try to do loops and stuff like that. But yeah, we take orders on. So for the bike deliveries, we take orders from Friday afternoon until Saturday at 3, and then I go out on deliveries at 3.
that's super cool.
So yeah. Oh, and sneak little peek. I had a meeting last night with Jessica Watson. I think many of you might know her.
Sure.
She's in Red
Red
Shoes
Shoes and Rosin.
and like Beard stuff like that. And so we are trying to spread the love. Today, who's on the doing the deliveries with Taryn and Leslie is Steph Cabell. Frequently plays at our West location and at Last Days of Autumn. So she's there playing some songs. And so looking forward to very soon getting a bike delivery set up where it is, and she's also an avid cyclist, with Jessica Watson and I. So I deliver the beer. She comes and plays you a song either on her guitar or her banjo.
Nice.
And
On
and
the
we're
back
gonna,
of her bike?
and
Just
we're
like-
we talked about that last night. I've actually got a trailer. I've
Okay.
actually got a bike trailer, and I think we're gonna put our instruments in cases and
That's
strap them,
amazing.
so.
Where else?
I was hoping it
Where
was more
else
like
can
a-
you get that?
like a sword sheath that she like
Yeah.
pulls it out of. But that's really cool. That's amazing. You guys are super creative, and I'm super pumped about this one. And you know what? So Garrett has a new record. It's already out, but it's not on vinyl yet. And I feel like it's a really great record. Maybe 6 months from now we can pair them up again. That would be really cool.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think this is really cool. I mean, if there's any good thing that comes out of all of this, I think some of this stuff will continue. I would love to keep. I mean, even when we're open and able to sell by the pint, I'd still love to do record and beer pairings. I don't see what's wrong with having somebody bike to your house and play some banjo on your porch either.
Not
Yeah.
a damn thing.
so-
That's what.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I think all the creativity and all the camaraderie and community that's come out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been
I
special.
would like to see some of that continue even once all this is all over.
Same. I think we can all agree on that. And that's a good place to kind of wrap this thing up.
Yeah, for sure.
This has been great, man. Thanks so much for coming in.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome.
Anything?
Yeah, no, that's good. Thanks,
Okay,
man.
cool,
Appreciate
cool. No problem.
Cheers.
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 Like raining, even with the light. Oh, the days kept on falling from the sky.